Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Morgan. This is my channel, Pisces Paperbacks, and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. And it's like 13 questions that are just an interesting way to reflect on the books that you read in the first half of the year. So yes, before I get started, I'd like to say once again that I am going to be linking resources to support the Black Lives Matter movement and demands for racial justice in the description box. I've been donating when I can. I'm currently unemployed, so I can only do so much, and I'm also currently self-isolating after going out to several protests in crowds larger than I've been in for months and months. So I'm doing what I can, and I hope you are also doing what you can, as well as reading books to educate yourself and finding more diverse voices to follow and listen to. Okay, with that said, this is the mid-year book freakout tag. Oh shit. Sorry, I thought I messed up my spreadsheet because I made a spreadsheet for this. Very proud of myself. In the first half of the year, I believe I read 76 books, which is like insane. It would have been higher. Oh, why are you making that face at me? My dog is looking at me. Can I help you? That was a very big yawn. It would have been higher, but obviously the past few months, or the past few months have been kind of stressful, but the past few weeks in particular, I just have not been interested in reading. I've been very much focused on what was happening in the real world. So these are the 76 books kind of summed up that I've read in the past 6 months, and let's get started. The first question is the best book you've read so far in 2020, and I've actually prepared multiple answers for most of these questions, so it's kind of a long list of books, sorry. But the 3 books that I want to talk about for the best book of the year are, let me get them. The 2 fictional books that I want to talk about are The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern and Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This one I believe I read in March, and this one I read in January, and they were just both so wonderful and escapist. I think that's something that I've really been looking for lately, and that's books that just take me out of this world, but also, because both of these books are, this is an alternate contemporary, like alternate history almost, and this is like a contemporary fantasy where, yes, it's fantasy, but it also takes place in modern day New York. So I think kind of that the real world but better is kind of what I've been going for lately. So The Red, White, and Royal Blue is about the son of the first woman president falling in love with the Prince of England, and it's just wonderful and funny. And I read the audiobook the first time, so I've never actually read the physical book, but that's something that I definitely want to reread sometime soon. And then The Starless Sea is about a guy named Zachary Ezra Rollins, and he discovers in grad school that he missed his chance as a child to discover the Starless Sea by opening a magical door, and now he's in his 20s trying to figure out a way to get to the Starless Sea now as an adult. And it's just one of the most perfect books I've ever read. So these were some of the best books I read this year. And then I do want to point out a nonfiction book that I read this year. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction in the past couple weeks specifically. So You Want to Talk About Race by, I believe it's Ijeoma Oluo is her name. I really enjoyed that one. But the book that I want to talk about now as my favorite nonfiction book that I've read this year is The Collected Schizophrenias by Esme Wei-Jun Wang. I just found this book so compelling and moving. It's the memoir essays of a woman with schizoaffective disorder, and basically what that means for her life, and each essay is just kind of a different aspect of what it means to have that diagnosis. And I found it very moving, and I really liked the writing because it really straddled the line between personal and academic. I really liked that, so I just thought this was wonderful, and I've talked about it before on my channel. Question number 2 is best sequel so far this year, and for that I'm going to say Return of the King by Lord of the Rings. I just found it so fucking satisfying, and I think that's especially because this book is just one book split into 3 parts and published in 3 parts. So it's a sequel, but it also is just like the most exciting parts of this book and the most satisfying parts of the resolution all rolled up into one one book. So I loved that book a lot. Not J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling. J.R.R. Tolkien is Lord of the Rings guy. Question number 3 is new releases you haven't read yet but want to, and 3 new releases that I've not all new. 2 very new releases that I picked up that I really want to read this year are Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas and the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix writes like tongue-in-cheek horror, and I've really been interested in reading some of his books, and this is just his new release, and I love vampires, so I thought I'd pick it up, and I love the cover. It's so cute. It's about a book club of, like, I believe housewives who start slaying vampires in South Carolina, maybe? Something like that. So, very excited for that. And then Catherine House is about this mysterious boarding school where all of the graduates are very, very successful, but in exchange, you basically go to this school for how long? 3 years, and you can't leave, and you're like cut off, no contact with the rest of the world. And I love the cover. It's like this wrought iron gate, and something about this is so appealing to me. And then this book actually came out, I believe, in December of last year. Let me check. I can't tell if this was published at the very end of last year, beginning of this year, but Things in Jars by Jess Kidd. The cover is really, really beautiful, and I believe it's about a Victorian era woman who's a detective, and she is, you know, trying to solve a mystery of a kidnapped child, but there's also kind of like magical elements, I believe, so it's one of those like the real world but better situations that I've kind of been looking for lately, and something about it, I just keep thinking about it, and I really want to read it, but I don't know when I'm going to get to it. Another one that came out recently that I don't have is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, which is about 2 sisters who find out they're sisters. They're like half sisters when their dad dies in a plane crash, and they find out upon his death that he had basically a second family, I believe in Puerto Rico. And this is another one by Elizabeth Acevedo that's written in verse, and I adored both of her other books, so I really want to read this one. I'll put the cover here. It has a beautiful cover. The next question is my most anticipated releases for the second half of the year, and for that I'm going to say Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which comes out very, very, very soon. I think like in the next month. Horrid by Katrina Leno, which I believe is coming out in September, and Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. I am trash, and I know it, but I want that book so bad. Mexican Gothic is, I believe, a kind of gothic mystery novel set in Mexico City in the 1960s, which is most of what I know about it, but it has a very pretty cover. Horrid by Katrina Leno. I honestly have no idea what this is about, but I'm obsessed with the cover, and I've really enjoyed the last Katrina Leno book I read, which was, I believe, You Must Not Miss. I thought that was really good. And then Midnight Sun is Twilight from Edward's perspective, aka the 3rd iteration of Twilight that will exist in this world, but I'm ready for it, so bring it on. Next question is the biggest disappointment so far, and for that I'm going to say Credence by Penelope Douglas. It's about a girl whose parents die, and then she's sent to go live with her step-uncle, so she's not related to him, and her 2 step-cousins, and she just kind of begins a romance with all 3 of them. And I hated this book, but it wasn't a disappointment because I didn't like it. Well, it was a disappointment that I didn't like it, but not because of the book letting me down, but because like I kind of was disappointed that I want to be into this like those like dark taboo like bully romances almost, and I just can't. I just don't think it's for me, which is disappointing because I feel like there's so many good recommendations out there for that, and I feel like I'm missing out, but I just like my romances to be happier and nicer, and I don't care if they're like antagonistic, like the leads are antagonistic to each other, but I still want them to be like cute, you know what I mean? So that one was disappointing, but not because like the book was bad. Like I hated it, but other people like it, and that's fine because I don't think the book was actually like bad objectively. It's just for me, yeah, not my fave. The next question is the biggest surprise, and for that I do have a romance, and that is The Sum of All Kisses by Julia Quinn. I read this a couple months ago, and I fucking loved it, and it was a surprise because I didn't expect it to enjoy it so much. It was just it's a pretty standard romance. Like, I read a lot of books very, very similar to this, and I just loved it. I thought it was so funny and so smart and self-aware and cute and sweet and sexy, and I just like really, really liked it, and it really surprised me because I didn't expect to like it that much. And then I have another book for biggest surprise, and that is The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski, which is the first book of short stories in the Witcher series. I was surprised that I liked it so much, one, because I don't usually read very high fantasy, and second, because I don't usually like short stories, so I was very worried about not liking the format, but I ended up loving it. It was very fairy tale-esque, very like reminiscent of, I don't know, very reminiscent of fairy tales. Like, you'd see the echo of the fairy tale that it might have been inspired by within each of the stories, and then they all like kind of come together to like paint this picture of the characters. I thought it was a really interesting character building to just introduce readers to the world and the characters before the story even starts, and I just thought it was really good. And I'm excited to read the rest of that series. The next question is favorite new author, and for that I'm gonna hardcore say Alyssa Cole. She wrote 2 of the books that I read this year. One is A Princess in Theory, and one was, I believe, A Duke by Default. They were both contemporary, like, mystery, royal romances, and I fucking loved them. I loved the first one pretty much more than the second one, but just in general, I love the characters that she writes. I love the dynamics that she writes. I think her sex scenes are really good. Marcy, what are you doing? Okay. And I'm just like obsessed. And I read both of the books that I read by her on audiobook, and I really like the narrators that she gets, and it's just like overall, I'm such a big fan now, and I will read anything she writes, and I'm going to be working my way through her Reluctant Royals series is what it's called. So, big fan, so into it. So good. So good. So good. Next is new fictional crush, and I don't really have like crushes on the characters that I read about. I know people do like my book boyfriends and my book girlfriends and stuff like that. It's not ever something that I really like did, but if I'm gonna pick one, I would pick Shadow from American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I just really liked him, and I just feel like he'd be like hot. So he's like stoic and kind of morally gray, but I just like into it. I just think he'd be cute. I don't know what like he looks like in the American Gods show that they just made, so I don't know, and I can't be like, he's that actor, so he's hot. But like in my head, he's like sexy. So that's what I'm gonna go with. And then the next question is new favorite character. And for that, I'm definitely gonna go with Morgan Crow from Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. Morgan Crow is this little 12-year-old, and I just wanted to hug her. First of all, we have very similar names. Her name is Morrigan, M-O-R-R-I-G-A-N, and I am Morgan, M-O-R-G-A-N. So, like, her name's a little fancier than mine, but I just wanted to, like, hug her and save, if you can hear something, that's my dog playing with her toy. I just wanted to hug her and save her and, like, wrap her up in a blanket, feed her dinner, be like, it's gonna be okay, you're gonna find people who love you, and she just deserves so much, and I just love her so much. And she's such a good protagonist for this series. I think it was a really interesting take to have not a dark character as the protagonist, because she's still a good person, but like she likes black as her favorite color, and she's just a little bit more macabre. It's very like almost Addams Family-esque, but like in a very fantastical, bright world, and I adore her so much. She's such a good character. The next question is books that made me cry. And if you don't know me in person, I am a crybaby, and I cry a lot about a lot of things. So I've cried a lot about many books, but I think the big ones this year are Jane Eyre, which is my favorite book of all time. I made a vlog rereading it for the first time in like 6 years. The Starless Sea and Red, White, and Royal Blue both made me cry like several times of happiness and like feeling seen in my soul. And then this one was a surprise for me, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This was a beautiful book, and it took me a really long time to get invested, but then by the very last 2 chapters, I was like sobbing. It was so good, and it was just such a good, it concluded everything and made it all fit together so wonderfully. But the book that made me cry the most this year for sure is Return of the King in the Lord of the Rings series. Like, I was like inconsolable for half an hour, and it was a hot mess, but I had a really good time. I was just so invested in the characters, and this one made me fucking cry. It made me fucking cry. And then the next question is books that made you happy, and the one that I want to go with is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ. I have like a mess of books next to me on this couch, but the one that made me happy is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. For this one, I'm gonna go with this book because I don't know who said it, but someone on Twitter was like talking about how they got this book and they were like really excited for it, and one of the replies was like, this book is like reading a Pixar movie, and that is 100%, that's like exactly the vibe that this book is. It's just fuzzy. It's just a warm and fuzzy book, and the whole thing, it just makes me happy, and I loved it. It was so good, but it's like good in this very like sweet, wholesome, I loved it, and it made me so happy, and it makes my heart warm to think about it, truly. The second to last question is the most beautiful book you've acquired thus far this year, and for me, that is 100% Foul is Fair by Hannah Capin. Something about this extremely bright and graphic illustration like really draws me in. I love when books incorporate the text of the title into the illustration in a really organic way. So like another one that does that is The House in the Cerulean Sea. I don't know if you can tell. And then here's another one, Catherine House. Catherine House does it too. Between these two, I'm much more drawn to this. I think it's because it's a little bit more graphic, but I still think they're beautiful. Like, I love the colors on this book too, but I am obsessed with this cover, and I think about it all the time, and I'm like, what a bold fucking choice to go with this color green, and it works so fucking well, and it just fits with the aesthetic of the book, and it's a good time, and it's really good. And then the very last question is a book you need to read by the end of the year, and let me see. The one, like, I have a lot. This whole pile is like my to be read, like, coming up pile. So all of those that I'm not going to go through, but one book that recently came out that I recently received in, like, not in the mail, but I picked it up at the bookstore, and I really want to read before the end of this year, is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the prequel to the Hunger Games. It takes place during the 10th Hunger Games, so like 64 years before the events of the Hunger Games. And I just don't want it waiting around in my house. Like, I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna keep it, but I'd rather read it sooner than later, just because I know that I'm not gonna be as excited to read it like in a year from now. So I really want to read this one, hopefully in the next couple months, but you know, we'll see. I'm not particularly inspired to read about someone developing the ideologies that will lead them to commit atrocities, but I will read it eventually, so it's a good time. And with that is all of the books for my mid-year book freak out tag. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you thought of them, if you're planning to read any of these, what you think of this video. I really like doing tags like this because it forces me to reflect, although I did not do it the right way by forcing myself to pick one book answer for each question, but I just can't be that decisive. Like, it's not gonna happen. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!